Hello, my name is Alice Wroe, and I'm the Extended Realities Lead at the Atlantic Institute. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to this special podcast episode, exploring the practicalities of collaboration across physical distance and leaning into a new industry, tech. Today we're looking at Living in Water, a 360 VR film made by Atlantic Fellow for Health Equity in Southeast Asia, Ana P. Santos, which depicts the impact of the climate change experienced by the people of Isla TIbaguin in the Philippines. Every day, the islanders are forced to adapt their ways of living because of the tides which continually subsume the island. As Anna often says, when the tides rise and subside, the community find they are literally living through climate change in slow motion. Anna joins me to discuss why she wanted to make the film and how it came together, partly because of the encouragement and support not only of the Atlantic Institute, but also of Myriam Hernández, an Atlantic Fellow for Social and Economic Equity. In this conversation, Myriam, Anna and myself discuss climate anxiety, collaboration and strategies for connection. I hope you enjoy.
Thank you, and this is beautiful to be with you on this call. And hi to everyone listening in. Thank you for joining this conversation. My name is Myriam Hernández, and Gawi is a 360 film about indigenous wisdom and practice for taking care of Mother Earth. This was a co-creation with the Raramuri community in northern Mexico, and Gawi means territory. And this is probably one of the first links and closeness that brings me to Anna is that both of our works talk about nature, and we see ourselves in this arc of justice through climate justice. So that's one of the many links to each other we have in each other's work.
So beautiful. I love the idea of your work winking to each other. Anna, over to you.
Hi, everyone, and hi, Alice, and hi, Miriam. I'm absolutely delighted to be with the two of you, whether it's in a virtual space or in a real world one. I am Ana P. Santos. I'm a Filipino journalist. I report on the intersections of gender, sexuality, and migrant rights. And most recently, because of the encouragement, the prompting, and inspiration brought by you two, I am now a filmmaker of a 360 virtual reality film called Living in Water. And this is about rising sea levels in the Philippines. So it is a focus on what is the lesser known and maybe the lesser reported on aspect of climate change, which is slow action climate change. So the climate change that you don't normally see from what we're more familiar with raging, erupting volcanoes, floodwaters, etc. But it is nonetheless insidious and harmful. And the film takes us to the lives of coastal communities that are on the front lines of this climate crisis.
You can see the kind of pride and connection that there is between the two of you, and it's just beautiful to see. I wonder, Anna, if you could talk a bit about when you met Myriam, how you met Myriam, and the impact that her 360 film had on you.
It's a tale of both like a meet cute and a serendipitous moment. Apart from the fact that Miriam and we share a history even long before we met, and I posted about this on Instagram because I'm Filipina and Miriam is Mexican, and they call us Filipinos the Mexicans of Asia. And so we have this deep history shared between our ancestors who used to till the farmlands in California and then led resistance protests in California that were historic in changing labor rights, labor wages, and protections for farm workers. So I think immediately I'm just so proud to have this kind of shared resistance with Miriam, written in our history and written in our blood. I came to the Atlantic residency with this idea of how do we do a film using immersive technology that can communicate to people what it's like to live with the climate crisis on a near daily basis? And then here comes the universe giving me Miriam saying, "Oh my God, Hermana, you have to do this film. And you're the only one who can do this." And I was like, "I don't have any experience in doing VR, Miriam." No, no, it will be done. It will be done. And I left that residency hopeful, but not knowing where it would take us. And look where we are today, having produced a film and still really involving the two of you who had first put in the seed of an idea into my heart and into my mind.
That's exactly how I remember it. On the final evening of the XR residency, I remember the two of you just in such deep conversation, and then Myriam leaning across, and I heard her saying, "It has to be you. It has to be you that tells this story." And I sensed that kind of real conviction and belief in each other. So yeah, the residency, the XR residency in the lab was obviously a really pivotal moment. But Myriam, you must have been as inspired by Anna because you got home and started researching ways that we could turn this into reality. So what happened next, Myriam?
I love how much this is a story about Anna and myself, but it's also a story about you, Alice, because you're the gluing part that got us together and that community that also held us during that residency that just made room for dream. It made room for curiosity and asking ourselves those questions. And so, what happened next? So, we got back to our places after this XR residency, and I think it was Anna who told me, "Hey, I found this grant and there's going to be a Q&A session about it." And they say they could fund XR projects, and she couldn't make it to the call, but I was like, "I'm going to listen in, take notes and just share it back." And I was just owning it at that call. I was just like, me and my partner, we are thinking about and it was fun, and I sat on that meeting so that it could be a good fit for this project because they were funding different moments of production. So that's how it started.
That was a pivotal meeting that got us the first grant to start the R&D for this project. And Miriam, do you remember? It was like a grant specifically for the Asia Pacific region. And they said, "Oh, you're from Mexico. Do you know that there's another meeting for the Mexican and Latin American component of this grant? Are you in the wrong meeting?" And you were like, "No, no, no, I'm here for me and my friend and me and my partner."
Represented Anna.
That is such a good example of Myriam, your character, but also the sort of energy that I see permeate through the Atlantic Fellows community, where it's like you saw an opportunity for Anna for this story that needed to be told and you rose up. And so then, Anna, you then took the project forward, and there was a number of other women at that point that are kind of woven in. And I wonder, could you tell us about any other fellows that you worked with, particularly women fellows, that kind of made this piece possible?
Well, when we were thinking about the curriculum for our Oxford residency, which was the R&D for the film, we thought about who we could involve. And the main component also of the film was understanding climate anxiety. And Miriam and I were very conscious. And I love that we're also on that same page about how, okay, we need to talk about this, but we shouldn't pathologize it. We shouldn't make people look like victims. We should be able to find both the bad and the good side of climate anxiety. But who can actually talk to us about that? And I think, Miriam, you had been kind of following the work of Suzanne, who we brought in to speak to us about climate anxiety. And then later on, I think when we did the filming, we were doing the filming at a time when there had just been back to back typhoons in the Philippines. So there was a leptospirosis outbreak, and living in water necessitated that we were filming in water as well for like 5 to 6 hours. We were submerged in floodwater, and I was so worried about the team and how we could do this. And so I called in Dr. Beverly Ho, the Equity Initiative Fellow, and she was our medical advisor. I have to tell those people listening, because Bev is the most, I think she's the most humble person. This is a person who was an undersecretary of the Department of Health. During COVID, she would be on TV giving the country regular updates about, COVID restrictions. And here I am texting her, "Bev, hey, we were in floodwater for 5 to 6 hours. What do we need to do?" And she would text me, "Okay, here's the bulletins on leptospirosis. And then check your feet. You need foot powder. Keep your feet dry." And I'd be like, "Bev, our feet were today like some water seeped into our boots." And no, it's fine. It's fine. You can do this. You can check for this. I thought it was like so amazing that this woman of this caliber was ready to help us and assist us and support us, not just in keeping the production on track, but keeping us also all healthy while doing it.
And Suzanne Raw, she's a GBHI fellow. Could you speak a little bit about her involvement? So, Miriam, you can describe it better.
She wrote a blog for the GBHI community. She also worked with indigenous worldviews about climate catastrophe. And so it linked with the questions I was holding for Gawi. How do we turn fear into hope and making space for non-Western ways of understanding these issues? And that's literally how I just read her piece, and it was just a good fit and also very evidence-based, and giving us a more scientific also reading of it. With Suzanne and others involved in the process, it's been like a snowball effect. And for anyone aspiring to do a VR film or to work on this tech, I think that the power of ideas is what get these projects going, because you tell it, and as wicked as it sounds, but it inspires people, and people just best their energy, their knowledge. And I think that's what happened with Suzanne. I remember on that call, she joined through the robot, and we were hugging the robot at the end of the meeting. You could feel the excitement of, I want this project to be out there, to have its own life. So that was how Suzanne got into the space.
That's why you're both such genius Atlantic Fellow collaborators, because you move through this landscape thinking and being able to lift up other people's expertise and passions. And yeah, you're exemplary in that. So I just wanted to congratulate you for it. And to add, we have this robot in the Atlantic Fellows XR lab, and I've seen the photo of Suzanne and the pair of you, and you're right, the touch between you is kind of palpable. There's this energy between your bodies, and of course she isn't physically there. So it's, yeah, really interesting. In this conversation, I've asked you a lot about, well, I've raised up your gender, and I've asked you a lot about other women. And the reason we've done this is because, of course, the tech space is heavily dominated by men. And these VR films that you've created, I am so proud that the Institute has been able to support two women storytellers to work in this space. And I wonder if you could speak a bit about how it has felt as a woman in this space, both creating, but then also thinking about the distribution of this work. Has that affected you? Anna, we can go to you first.
I always approach a lot of things from the point of view of emotion, because I think that's something that people will understand regardless of what language you speak. And it's something that stays with you. You don't remember a lot of things that people say, and that there's not a famous quote, but you will always remember how something made you feel. And for this experience of working on living in water, my guidance was, Miriam's ethical storytelling. And I had to rethink also ways that I'm used to doing storytelling and investigations and a hardcore investigation, which has a different set of tenets, right? But this one required really being more in touch with the community. And when I think about being a woman in this space, I think about how I have this picture of us and the whole crew, and I'm the only woman there. Even the boatman is a boatman, I'm the only person there who identifies as female. And I had this conversation with the other members of the team, and I said, thank God you're not one of those. None of the people on this team are who are passively aggressive about taking lead from a woman, because nobody will say that outright, but they will make you feel it, right? They'll make you feel it. They'll make you question your decisions. They'll make you somehow subtly feel that you don't know a certain aspect of production. And I don't come there pretending that I do. But I think that what helped all of us in a team was, okay, Errol, you're the audio guy. This is your watch for audio. Richard, you're the virtual reality capture guy. So this is your watch. And this is the person who is tasked to direct this. This is the vision for the entire story. And I think that's how we came to a whole level of respect for one another and each other's work and expertise. And I just wanted to also share one last bit. The whole ethical storytelling thing was part of how we also dealt with the logistics for not just the people in the community, but also for us as a production team. And so we had things like the resources to actually get separate rooms for one another. And I thought that was just right. I know that not all productions would have that, but later on, Yuli, our driver, told me, he's like, Ma, and he posted on Facebook and he said, I wanted to thank you. I think he asked me something like, how were you able to do it? And I said, well, I have my own room, so why shouldn't you?
I love how you've linked that directly back to the ethical storytelling guidelines that Myriam had developed. Myriam, I'm itching to hear your answer to the same question, but I'd also love for you to talk a bit about these guidelines because they've influenced Anna hugely. They've influenced me greatly in my work. It's a gift to our community that was developed in your program year, I believe. I'd love to hear about that as well.
So that ethical checklist was developed as part of my project, as part of my active fellowship year. It was actually the core. That's where the heart laid on this project because I could see the value and the power of VR production or XR production for social justice. But I always came with questions about the ethics about it and how if this new technology could also make space for other ways of doing, other ways of creating, because it literally takes the camera off one person and then it kind of opens the room for another kind of relationship with the camera because the 360 camera is like a bubble, like a ball. And so this ethical checklist is the result of years of production with VR and communities. And it started maybe with 10 items on this list. And then it became a manuscript, almost like an endless manuscript, because of course we have dealt with different dilemmas and debates as the journey continues about production, post production, distribution. How do we split the fares? I was also very lucky to have women sharing their advice, their experience, but it wasn't documented. It was like, well, we tried a co-creation memo. Do we have a template for that? Well, no. Let's create it then. So all of these things have been in that checklist that it's open for everyone. It talks very specifically about VR, but it's transferable to any knowledge production or media production because there's always power dynamics on it. And I think that's where I see the value is in the process, not necessarily the outcome, but the outcomes normally of these kind of processes are beautiful and powerful and have a life of their own. So that's what I put all my hope for.
It's a incredible resource. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Our conversation will draw to a close, but I have one more question, which is around the kind of practicalities of your friendship, working relationship, collaboration. You live so far apart. You've got time zones and countries between you. And I'm wondering, what are the strategies, the practical strategies for keeping this kind of tender solidarity together?
So Miriam and I send many podcasts to one another. We send each other like really long voice notes and we appear like on each other's WhatsApp or Instagram. And sometimes I just send over a meme or something, some news bit about linking Mexicans and Filipinos. There's quite a bit going on in social media, so I find that very funny. And who better to share that with, right, than my Mexican friend? And I always tell her, okay, another reel reminding us of our shared history. And but what I really value are these voice notes because it's just nearly impossible to catch up with each other given the time zones and then life. Life and work and the different circumstances that we have about life and work. So, this is how our way of connecting has been. I send voice notes. Sometimes there's like days before we replied to each other, and sometimes like more than days, but it's really amazing how we just pick up on it. And then sometimes I have the same emotions, and some I'm weepy, I'm like screeching. In some of these voice notes, the phone is held horizontally to my face, and I really feel like I'm speaking to Miriam. And I hope she can feel that too in the way that I deliver my voice notes, and we always end with something like a huge warm kiss or a hug to one another, which we hope our voices will convey, even if our presence cannot.
I can tell from Miriam's face that they mean as much to her. Myriam, how do you find these voice notes?
One thing that I've experienced even more with Anna's voice note is to build true relationships through WhatsApp without being the source of stress or urgency. And as Anna said, we respect the time and days go past. And from this experience, from this exchange, I'm becoming very comfortable and promoting more of these kind of communication that not from the urgency emotion but from the real genuine interest and joy for communicating and learning with one another. And it's also I'm bringing that to my current work as well. So there's so much learning. And another layer that I think it's important in this exchange is, as much as we talk about XR, about VR, challenges that we encounter, we are intentional in making room for personal. Even in the space that we had in Oxford with the other members of the crew, we were intentional about making room for everyone's heartfelt intention about what moves you about this project. And I remember, and it stayed with me, that Anna shared a personal story about her own experience as a mother. And that has also linked to what we can also talk about motherhood and VR and being on these crazy trips and learning about new tools and the story that we carry and that we want to tell to our families. So all of those things are embedded, are weaved into this film. And so I think that's why it is so important to keep the the audios, and they're very emotional. I heard one of Anna's podcasts in the bank, and people were just like, wow, what's coming out from that? I forgot that I wasn't a speaker, and Anna was telling me just after Van Gogh, like all of the emotions, and oh my gosh, it was like a telenovela on a on audio. So I just feel close to her, and I think that's something that has worked for us. But also beyond this project, I have had conversations with other fellows. I'm thinking of Dela, I'm thinking of Dana, that are also stepping into this world. And we just find so refreshing to mirror ourselves and just remind that we're not alone, that we have never been alone, and we will just stand by each other. And we're organizing virtual cafes just to hang, just to say like, yes, you've got this, hermana. I think that's another strategy to make this possible.
Thank you for mentioning, Dolores Wilson and Dana Waldrath, two other fellows, one from Atlantic Fellows for Racial Equity, one from the Brain Health Programme again, who are doing exactly what you just said, bringing the personal into these stories and also into the way that these stories are told. That's what you both did beautifully. The way that these projects were produced were as aligned with your values and who you show up as in the world as the final pieces. And I think that if there was a takeaway from this conversation for anybody listening who wants to enter this tech space, wants to kind of learn or be in this immersive world but doesn't feel like it's for them, I guess our message as three women that work in this space is bring yourself to these projects. Don't try and mold yourself to fit the model that you think should be welcome here, but bring your own fears, excitements, passions, interests, expertise, and you should be able to find a beautiful space like Myriam and Anna have done in community with each other.
I didn't want to end this conversation without this acknowledgement to you, Alice. When I was talking to Myriam, she would talk about so much about how you have encouraged her to be in this VR space, and how, because of the way that you had made this space welcoming, soft for her, she made that for me. I want to just say that these small things, we don't think about how they affect people in the way that we do it on a daily basis, but they do, and it has this like halo knock-on effect that it passes on, it comes back, and it's replicated in the most amazing of ways. And I think that that has to be acknowledged. And to both of you, I just had this dream to make this film. And you both, and the whole community that came around us, the way that the universe conspired to do it, really made that happen. But I go back to the two of you being my hype squad. Because after all of those things, it's one thing to do that and create an output. But I know that when I go home, sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? Do I know what I'm doing? Am I doing this right? I know that I have you two to lean on for that. And I think that for me, we all in our small little ways have a capacity to make another person's dream come true.
Atlantic fellow Anna P. Santos bringing us to the end of our conversation. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it on. And if you would like to hear more Atlantic Fellows podcasts, please find us on SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can visit our website, www.atlanticfellows.org. I'm Alice Wroe. Thanks for listening.